Hey, this is John, and welcome back to Olive Grove Woodshop. So I want to talk about a few things in this episode. The biggest one is making sure that somebody doesn't make the same mistake that I made, and that you're about to see here in a minute. So I was starting the finishing process for this console top, and everything was going according to plan as I was making the last pass with the UV light. And then I saw this. How did this happen? Did I drop something on it? Was there some kind of scrap or screw on my workbench? And then it hit me. It was the damn paint points I used to elevate the top during the sanding process, to ironically keep it from getting damaged. I've used these things for a number of years with no issues, but this mulberry top is so dense that the weight of it caused the indent. Well, you know what they say, out with the old and in with the new. So I upgraded to bench nuts from Carbon Method, which brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, and that's the tools and other things you see me using in my videos. If I'm using it, it's because it's either the best tool for me for the task, or the best one I could afford at the time, or like these bench nuts, it's just the right tool for the job. Now, I do have sponsors that I've partnered with, but I can promise you that every one of my sponsors either makes something I've already been using, or it's something I've always wanted to use. And on that note, today's sponsor is Carbon Method. They make some really awesome products, from shop accessories like these bench nuts or their magnetic dust ports, to ceramic finishes for metal tools and wood surfaces like the one I'll get to later in this video. I highly recommend giving their products a try. You won't be disappointed. Now back to fixing my dent problem. I had to plane down the top about 1/8 of an inch to get past the dent and then redo the entire sanding process. And these bench nuts work great for that. Not only did they elevate the wood off the bench without marring it, they did a great job holding it in place during the more aggressive sanding. Here I am sanding this top before I got the bench nuts, and even though one end is clamped to the bench, I'm still chasing this thing around trying to belt sand the edge. And now here's me sanding the edge with just the bench nuts, and there is zero movement. The holding power of these things with only the weight of the wood is just nuts. See what I did there? Yeah, I'm dropping dad jokes. You know why? Because I'm also a real dad. And I got the shoes to prove it. So if anyone at New Balance is watching, I could use a fresh pair of 608s if you're interested in sponsoring. Alright, so back to the work at hand. The amount of time and actual labor that this little dent cost me is actually pretty substantial. Especially because taking off that much of the top exposed a handful of small bubbles and imperfections that were under the surface of the epoxy. Also, in full disclosure, I used some off-brand epoxy for the main pour to fill the cracks because I originally forgot to order more Total Boat and then was too impatient to wait for it to get here. Luckily, the first time around I was able to touch up those areas with the new Total Boat and it blended perfectly. But that also means I had to do the touch-ups again, which cost me another day of waiting on it to cure. So the moral of the story is, don't be impatient because it never fails. The cheap stuff always ends up costing more in the long run, so just get the good stuff, so you can be sure you're doing it right the first time. And then it's back to the belt sander to knock down the extra epoxy. Now you could do this with any sander, but the belt sander will definitely do it faster. Just remember to be careful. Belt sanders can get away from you in a flash and gouge the piece pretty bad. And not to sound like a broken record, but I'm legit impressed with how these bench nuts keep the piece perfectly still during all this, even with the vibrations and pull from recutting the round over with the trim router. I don't know what kind of voodoo is going on with these things, but it's working and I dig it. So here I am just doing the last bit of touch up, and CA glue is perfect for these tiny imperfections. And using the clear CA glue is fine. You won't be able to tell any difference. Then a quick knockdown with 150 grit before I start the final sanding. And I know I harp on it a bit, but it is super important to be patient when sanding and working through your grits, which I realize can take a long time depending on the size of the piece, the look you're going for, and the finish that you're using. Now, I will admit, when I first got into woodworking, I naively cut corners when it came to sanding. Pretty much everything I made would get 180 grit to start and then a quick pass at 220 till it felt smooth to the touch. Hell, sometimes I would just hit it with 220 and call it good. Now, I'm bringing this up for a few reasons. One reason is to help break down the mystique that sometimes surrounds woodworking, especially for someone who's just beginning their woodworking journey. When you watch these videos on YouTube, everything seems almost effortless. But what you don't see through the magic of editing is all the little mistakes and tweaks that happen along the way to get those pristine final shots of the finished episode. And sure, we'll throw in a mistake with an overly dramatic reaction before completing what's an easy and straightforward fix. The other reason is to let you know how much time it really takes to build these things, especially if you remove the extra time involved from all the setup, camera work, and reshoots because I forgot to hit record, plus the fact that I can really only get shop time in on the weekends because I have a regular job, and I actually enjoy spending time with my wife and daughters. Now, the relatively straightforward console table this top is for ended up taking about 70 to 80 hours to complete. Well, that was before this dang paint point debacle that added another 10 to 12 hours. But the hard truth is, doing anything the right way takes time. And like my pappy used to say, anything worth doing is worth doing right. And here's one last thing to help encourage anyone who's just starting their woodworking journey. This console table is actually for my house, and it's been a very long time coming, and here's why. This was the first piece of furniture I ever built for the house that my wife and I bought and remodeled as we were planning for our wedding 18 years ago. And let's just say we made some poor choices in those days. And I mean the remodeling of a house that was all original from 1974, down to the avocado and cocoa linoleum and lavender shag carpet, all while trying to plan for a wedding. Not the marriage part though. That was definitely a good decision. It was made with a piece of live edge camphor and some off-the-shelf poplar from the orange store. And I think the only tools I had at that time was a $50 circular saw, a secondhand trim nailer, and an old palm sander. But the reason I'm showing this is so you can see that we all started out not knowing what the hell we were doing, and it takes time to develop your skills. And don't be scared to get out of your comfort zone. I encourage you to challenge yourself to try new methods and techniques. That's how you get better. And yeah, you're going to screw some stuff up. Shoot, I've been at it for almost 20 years, and this is a whole video about a mistake I made. And if you're anything like me, you learn the most from working through those mistakes. Alright, now back to fixing my mistake. One of the nice things about the finishing methods I'm using on this top is I only need to work my way up to 320 grit so I can apply the wipe-on UV cured finish from Clean Armor, who is not a sponsor by the way, but their finish is the most affordable at the moment, so it's the one I started using. What really seals the deal on this top, insert dad joke again, is the ceramic nano finish from Carbon Method. This stuff adds a serious level of protection over any wood finish you use and gives the perfect finished look to the piece with just the right amount of sheen. Plus, it makes the wood feel oh so silky smooth. Seriously though, everyone who sees this console table can't resist running their hand over it while saying how nice my wood feels. And that, my friends, is what we call a hat trick in the world of bad jokes. But in all seriousness, it actually doesn't matter if the people put their grimy hands on it, because this nano finish helps repel the oil that causes fingerprints. So now, no matter what base finish I use, everything I make gets this nano finish treatment before I send it off to its new home. And I'm not joking. This stuff is an absolutely awesome product and I can't recommend it enough. I mean, look how good that final finish on this top came out. So I guess if you take anything away from this video, it's to always make sure you use the right tools for the job. Push yourself to try new things because everyone makes mistakes, so don't be scared of them. And check out Carbon Method's line of shop accessories and finishes. Until next time, this is John with Olive Grove Woodshop. Keep on building.